There's a woman you know. Maybe it's you. Maybe it's someone you love. She moves through her days with perfect composure, checking every box society has drawn for her. Career, thriving. Social media, curated. Independence, declared. But if you could see beneath the surface, you'd witness something different. A quiet exhaustion that lives in her bones. A perpetual performance of strength that never ends, never rests. Shame is a soul-eating emotion, Carl Jung wrote. And shame, it seems, has become the hidden soundtrack of modern womanhood. Shame for needing support. Shame for showing vulnerability. Shame for not being endlessly capable of carrying everyone else's expectations along with their own. Watch her in a meeting, presenting ideas with unwavering confidence while internally calculating whether she's said too much, too little, or struck the wrong tone. See her scrolling through social media, comparing her authentic struggles to everyone else's highlight reels. Notice how she apologizes for taking up space, even when she's earned every inch of it. This isn't about weakness. This is about strength, wielded as a weapon against herself. We've created a world where women feel they must prove their worth daily, hourly, in ways both seen and unseen, where having it all became a mandate rather than a choice. Where the mask of perfection grew so heavy that many forgot what their real face looked like underneath. Jung understood something we've forgotten. The heaviest burdens are often invisible, and the crisis facing today's women isn't that they're broken. It's that they're carrying weights no soul was meant to bear alone. But what if we've been looking at this all wrong? What if the real problem isn't women trying to be too strong, but a world that won't let them be fully human? The most terrifying thing is to accept oneself completely, Jung observed, and perhaps this explains why so many women have chosen to live inside carefully constructed personas rather than risk showing who they truly are. Sarah, let's call her Sarah, spent 15 years climbing the corporate ladder. To everyone around her, she was the embodiment of success. Decisive, unflappable, always 3 steps ahead. But late at night, alone in her apartment, she'd stare at the ceiling and wonder when she'd stopped feeling like herself. The persona, as Jung called it, is the mask we wear for the world. It's not inherently wrong. We all need some protection as we navigate social expectations. But Sarah's mask had grown so thick, so perfectly crafted, that she'd lost touch with the person wearing it. Think of persona as the social costume we put on each day. Just as actors wear different costumes for different roles, we develop personas for different situations: professional, family, social. The danger comes when we forget we're wearing a costume at all. This forgetting doesn't happen overnight. It's a gradual process, often beginning in childhood, when girls learn that being good means being accommodating, that being loved means being useful, that being safe means being perfect. The persona starts as protection and slowly becomes a prison. For many women today, the persona has become so elaborate, so demanding, that maintaining it consumes enormous amounts of energy. They're not just performing one role. They're juggling multiple personas simultaneously. The competent professional, the caring daughter, the independent woman, the perfect partner, the supportive friend. Take a moment to consider, in which areas of your life do you feel most authentic? Where do you feel like you're performing a role? This awareness, without judgment, is the first step toward integration. The tragedy isn't that women wear these masks. The tragedy is that many have forgotten they have a choice. But recognition is the beginning of freedom. And perhaps the most radical act a woman can perform today is to slowly, carefully begin removing the masks that no longer serve her true self. If this resonates with something you've felt but never quite named, this sense of living behind masks, of performing strength, of carrying invisible weights, stay with us. This journey gets deeper, and you might find pieces of yourself you thought were lost forever. Where love rules, there is no will to power, and where power predominates, love is lacking, Jung wrote, capturing perhaps the most painful dilemma facing women today. We've told women they can have everything, but we haven't told them the cost. In boardrooms, they learn to speak with authority, to take up space, to compete. In relationships, they're expected to soften, to nurture, to yield. The whiplash between these expectations is exhausting. Consider Maria, a lawyer who spent years perfecting the art of strategic thinking and emotional control. In court, she was formidable. At home, she struggled to turn off the analytical mind that had become her greatest professional asset. Her partner complained she was too in her head, while her colleagues respected her precisely because she never let emotions cloud her judgment. The modern world has asked women to master masculine traits, logic, competition, independence, while simultaneously maintaining feminine ones, empathy, collaboration, intuition. But it's offered little guidance on how to integrate these seemingly opposing energies. Jung believed we all carry both masculine, animus, and feminine, anima, energies within us. The animus represents logic, structure, and achievement. The anima represents intuition, emotion, and connection. Wholeness comes from integrating both, not choosing one over the other. Many women today haven't been taught integration. They've learned compartmentalization. Be powerful at work, soft at home, be independent in your career, dependent in love. Be strategic in your goals, spontaneous in your relationships. This split creates an internal war that exhausts the soul. The cost shows up in countless ways. Women who can negotiate million-dollar deals but struggle to ask for what they need in relationships. Leaders who inspire teams but feel disconnected from their own desires. Achievers who've mastered external success but feel empty inside. For 1 week, notice when you feel you need to switch modes between different environments. Rather than judging this, simply observe. What parts of yourself do you suppress in professional settings? What aspects do you hide in personal relationships? Awareness is the first step toward integration. The solution isn't to choose power over love or love over power. It's to recognize that true feminine strength comes from the ability to flow between these energies as needed, without losing sight of the authentic self that contains multitudes. Some days, love leads. Some days, power serves. But both are expressions of the same source. A woman who knows herself completely enough to choose consciously rather than react automatically. Every form of addiction is bad, no matter whether the narcotic be alcohol, morphine, or idealism. Jung warned with the insight of someone who understood that our greatest strengths can become our most subtle prisons. And perhaps no addiction is more socially praised, more culturally reinforced, more personally devastating than the addiction to being strong. We've created a culture where women's vulnerability is seen as weakness, where needing support is interpreted as failure, where admitting struggle is viewed as surrender. Social media amplifies this pressure exponentially. Endless feeds of women who appear to have it all together, who never show their struggles, who project an image of effortless competence that makes everyone else feel inadequate by comparison. In response to these pressures, many women have become addicted to their own strength, not the kind that flows from authentic power and self-knowledge, but the kind that grinds forward through sheer will, the kind that maintains control at all costs, the kind that never bends because it's forgotten how to be flexible without breaking. I think of Rachel, who hadn't cried in public since she was 12 years old. The transformation began that day when her father, frustrated by her tears over a scraped knee, told her that big girls don't cry and that she needed to toughen up. The message was clear. Emotions were weakness. Vulnerability was unacceptable. Strength was the only way to earn respect and avoid rejection. Over the years, Rachel built an identity around being the strong one. The friend everyone called during a crisis, the daughter who handled family emergencies without complaint, the colleague who never missed deadlines despite impossible workloads, the partner who provided endless emotional support while rarely asking for any in return. Her strength was real, her competence undeniable, her reliability legendary. But it had become a cage that trapped her as surely as any prison. When her 15-year marriage ended, not dramatically, but through the slow erosion of intimacy that occurs when one person carries all the emotional weight, Rachel maintained her composure at work, continued supporting friends through their problems, managed her elderly father's medical appointments, and organized her daughter's college applications. To the outside world, she was handling her divorce with admirable grace and strength. But inside, Rachel was dying. The grief, fear, loneliness, and rage that she couldn't allow herself to feel in public were eating away at her from within. She was strong, capable, unbreakable. She was also slowly suffocating under the weight of her own invulnerability. A complex can set up a person as if it had a will of its own, Jung observed with characteristic precision. And the strong woman complex had taken over Rachel's life, operating like an autonomous force that demanded perfection, denied weakness, maintained control at all costs, and punished any deviation from its rigid standards. A complex is a cluster of emotions, memories, and associations that become split off from conscious awareness, but continues to influence behavior from the unconscious. When a complex is activated, it's as if a different personality takes over. You're no longer acting from your conscious will, but from the autonomous demands of the complex. The strong woman complex often develops as a survival mechanism in childhood, but can become a prison that prevents authentic expression and genuine connection. This complex manifests in countless ways. The inability to ask for help, even when drowning in responsibilities. The compulsion to solve everyone else's problems while ignoring your own. The fear that showing vulnerability will make others lose respect for you. The exhaustion that comes from carrying weights you were never meant to lift alone. The rage that surfaces when others don't appreciate your sacrifices. The emptiness that grows when you realize you've become useful rather than loved. The most insidious part of this complex is how society rewards and reinforces it. Strong women get promoted, praised, and held up as examples of female empowerment. They're featured in magazines, celebrated on social media, and pointed to as proof that women can do anything. The external validation feeds the complex, making it stronger and more entrenched. But beneath the accolades and achievements, many of these women are suffocating under the weight of expectations. They've internalized so deeply they can no longer distinguish between authentic strength and performance. They've become so identified with being strong that they've lost access to the full range of human experience. The vulnerability that creates intimacy, the neediness that allows others to feel useful, the uncertainty that makes life interesting, the imperfection that makes people relatable. When was the last time you let someone else take care of you without feeling guilty or trying to reciprocate? Immediately? What would happen if you admitted to someone close to you that you're struggling and don't have all the answers? What are you afraid people would think if they saw you as less than perfectly capable? What did you learn about strength and vulnerability in childhood? And how is that still influencing your choices today? Notice what arises in response to these questions without trying to fix or change anything immediately. The addiction to strength also shows up in smaller daily ways, the inability to sit still without being productive, the compulsion to give advice instead of simply listening, the tendency to take on more responsibilities than necessary, the difficulty receiving compliments or gifts, the automatic response of "I'm fine" even when falling apart inside, the exhaustion that comes from always being on. True strength, Jung understood, isn't the absence of vulnerability. It's the courage to be authentic, even when authenticity includes struggle, uncertainty, fear, or need. It's the wisdom to know when to hold and when to release, when to support, and when to receive support, when to lead, and when to follow. It's the capacity to remain rooted in truth, regardless of external storms, but also the flexibility to bend without breaking when life requires adaptation. The journey back to authentic strength often begins with recognizing the prison bars of performed strength. It requires admitting that the armor that once protected you might now be preventing the very connections you most deeply crave. It means learning to trust that people can love you not despite your humanity, but because of it. That your struggles, needs, and imperfections make you relatable rather than weak. And sometimes, the most powerful thing a woman can do, the most radical act of strength she can perform, is to admit, "I don't have it all figured out. I'm struggling more than I let on. I need support, and that's not just okay. It's human." We're at the heart of this exploration now. The place where recognition can be painful but also liberating. If you're feeling something shift inside, resistance, recognition, relief, or even anger, trust that feeling. Your soul is responding to truth, and that response is sacred. Don't scroll away from what's stirring in you. The privilege of a lifetime is to become who you truly are. Jung reminds us with words that feel both inspiring and terrifying. For many women who have spent years, even decades, living according to external expectations and internal complexes, this journey back to authenticity feels simultaneously urgent and overwhelming. After years of wearing masks, the question, "Who am I really?" can feel impossibly large. The personas have been worn so long, they've left imprints on the face beneath. The performances have been practiced so thoroughly that spontaneous expression feels foreign and risky. The strength complex has been so dominant that vulnerability feels like stepping off a cliff without knowing if there's ground below. But there's something beautiful that happens when a woman begins to reclaim her authentic self. It's not a dramatic transformation that happens overnight. It's more like coming home to a house you'd forgotten you owned, finding rooms you didn't remember existed, discovering treasures you'd hidden so well you'd forgotten they were there. Emily's story illustrates this journey with the complexity and messiness that real transformation requires. For 23 years, she'd been the responsible one in every context. At work, in her marriage, with her aging parents, among her friends. She was the project manager who never missed deadlines, the wife who remembered anniversaries and managed social calendars, the daughter who coordinated medical appointments and family gatherings, the friend who remembered birthdays and provided emotional support during crises. At 42, facing a midlife transition that felt more like a midlife questioning, Emily found herself exhausted by her own life. She had achieved everything she was supposed to want: successful career, stable marriage, beautiful home, financial security. But she felt empty inside, as if she were living someone else's life, very competently. The wake-up call came from an unexpected source: her teenage daughter. During what Emily thought was a casual conversation about future plans, her daughter said quietly, "Mom, you never seem happy. You seem busy, competent, like you have everything under control, but not happy. When was the last time you did something just because you wanted to, not because you had to, or because someone else needed you to?" That comment cracked something open in Emily's carefully constructed world. It was as if her daughter had held up a mirror that showed her not the competent, successful woman she thought she was projecting, but a tired performer who had forgotten she was performing. For the first time in years, Emily began to ask herself questions she'd avoided. What do I actually enjoy? Separate from what I'm good at or what others expect from me? What would I choose if no one else's opinion mattered? When do I feel most alive and authentic? What parts of myself have I suppressed in order to fit into the life I've built? Spend 10 minutes each day in complete solitude. No phone, no distractions, no agenda, no productivity goals. Simply sit with yourself and notice what emerges from the silence. What thoughts arise when you're not managing them? What emotions surface when you're not suppressing them? What longings appear when you're not dismissing them as impractical? This isn't about finding answers immediately. It's about re-establishing a relationship with your inner world after years of focusing exclusively on external demands. The answers that began emerging surprised Emily. She realized she loved gardening, but had convinced herself she was too busy for such an unproductive hobby. She discovered she enjoyed deep, philosophical conversations about meaning and purpose, but had labeled such discussions as impractical and self-indulgent. She craved solitude and silence, but had filled every moment with social obligations and family responsibilities, because she believed that's what good wives and mothers do. Slowly, tentatively, Emily began making small changes, saying no to commitments that drained her energy without contributing to anything she valued, saying yes to activities that nourished her soul even if they seemed selfish, creating boundaries around her time and energy that allowed space for her own needs and desires. Jung called the process of becoming your authentic self individuation, the psychological development where you differentiate yourself from unconscious, collective patterns and discover your unique path. It's not about becoming selfish or rejecting all social responsibilities. It's about becoming genuinely yourself so you can contribute your unique gifts to the world from a place of authenticity rather than compulsion. The journey back to self isn't linear or predictable. There are days when the old patterns feel safer, when wearing familiar masks seems easier than facing the unknown territory of authenticity. There are moments of guilt when choosing your own needs feels wrong, periods of confusion when you're not sure who you are without your roles and responsibilities, times of grief when you realize how much life you've lived according to others' scripts rather than your own authentic desires. Emily discovered that reclaiming authenticity required not just adding new things to her life, but grieving what she'd lost along the way. She mourned the years spent in a career that utilized her skills but didn't align with her values. She grieved the relationships where she'd been valued for her usefulness rather than her essence. She felt sadness for the younger version of herself who had learned to abandon her own needs in order to secure love and approval. What dreams did you abandon because they seemed impractical or selfish? What aspects of your personality did you suppress because they didn't fit the roles you needed to play? What would you attempt if you weren't afraid of disappointing others? What would you stop doing if you weren't afraid of being judged as selfish or irresponsible? This process often involves what Jung called shadow work, reclaiming parts of yourself that you've rejected or hidden because they didn't fit your idealized self-image. For Emily, this meant acknowledging her anger about years of unreciprocated caregiving, her resentment about always being the responsible one, her desire for recognition and appreciation that she'd labeled as needy. But grief and shadow work, Jung understood, are not the enemies of growth. They're the companions that walk with us as we release what no longer serves and reclaim what was always ours. The tears Emily shed for her lost years weren't signs of breakdown. They were signs of breakthrough, of a soul finally allowed to feel what it had been carrying in silence. What emerges from this process isn't perfection, but presence. Not invulnerability, but authentic strength. Not the absence of struggle, but the capacity to meet struggle with grace and honesty. The woman who emerges from this journey hasn't eliminated her challenges. She's changed her relationship to them completely. She no longer sees vulnerability as weakness, but as honesty and courage. She no longer needs to prove her worth through endless achievement, but trusts in her inherent value as a human being. She no longer performs strength like a circus act, but embodies it, not as rigid force that never bends, but as flexible resilience that can adapt without losing its essential nature. This transformation isn't just personal, it's revolutionary. When a woman stops performing and starts being, she gives permission for others to do the same. When she chooses authenticity over approval, she creates space for genuine connection. When she honors her own needs alongside others, she models what healthy relationships actually look like. Your vision will become clear only when you look into your heart. Who looks outside, dreams. Who looks inside, awakes, Jung wrote, offering us perhaps the most important truth for our times. These words aren't just beautiful philosophy. They're ikas, a practical roadmap for the journey from performance to presence, from dreaming about the life you want to awakening to the life you're actually living. We live in an age of relentless external seeking, scrolling endlessly for validation from strangers, competing desperately for recognition in systems that will never satisfy, achieving frantically for approval that disappears as soon as it's given. We've become addicted to looking outside ourselves for the answers to questions that can only be resolved within. But the women who find genuine peace, who radiate authentic presence, who create lives of deep meaning rather than mere external accomplishment, they've learned the radical art of turning inward, not as an escape from the world, but as the foundation for engaging with it authentically. This inward turn isn't about navel-gazing or self-absorption. It's not about rejecting responsibilities or becoming selfish. It's about recognizing a fundamental truth. The answers you seek, the peace you crave, the sense of purpose and direction you long for, they don't exist in the external world waiting to be found. They exist within you, waiting to be uncovered, waiting to be trusted, waiting to be lived. The hidden crisis behind today's women isn't that they're failing at external requirements. Most are succeeding brilliantly at meeting everyone else's expectations. The crisis is that they've become so focused on external validation, so skilled at meeting external demands, so identified with external roles that they've lost touch with their internal compass. They know what others want from them, but they've forgotten what they want for themselves. They can navigate everyone else's needs with supernatural accuracy, but they're strangers to their own desires. Before sleep tonight, and then regularly as a practice, ask yourself, if I could live tomorrow exactly as I choose, without considering anyone else's expectations, opinions, or potential reactions, what would feel most alive and true to who I really am? Don't analyze the answer. Don't judge it as practical or impractical. Don't immediately start planning how to make it happen. Just listen to what emerges from your heart and notice how it feels different from the voice in your head that's usually making decisions based on what you should do. But here's what Jung understood that our culture has forgotten. When a woman reconnects with her authentic self, she doesn't become selfish. She becomes generous in ways that are sustainable and nourishing rather than depleting. She doesn't become weak. She becomes strong in ways that don't require constant maintenance and performance. She doesn't become less valuable to others. She becomes valuable in ways that create genuine connection rather than transactional relationships. When a woman knows herself completely, not perfectly, But honestly, she stops trying to be all things to all people and starts being fully herself in each situation. This allows others to see her clearly, to love her authentically, to relate to her genuinely rather than to the masks she's been wearing. Paradoxically, becoming more herself makes her more available for real relationship, not less. Think about the women in your life who feel most authentic, most present, most genuinely themselves. They're not perfect. Perfection is boring and intimidating. They're not invulnerable. Invulnerability is lonely and exhausting. What makes them magnetic is their willingness to be fully human, to show up as they are, rather than as they think they should be. Jung distinguished between the ego, our conscious identity, often heavily influenced by external expectations, and the self, our deeper, authentic nature that includes both conscious and unconscious elements. The journey from ego-driven living to self-directed living is what he called individuation, becoming who you truly are, rather than who you think you should be. The journey we've taken together, from recognizing the masks we wear, through understanding the impossible choices we've been given, to reclaiming our authentic selves, isn't a destination but a continuous practice. There's no graduation from being human, no final achievement of perfect authenticity, no permanent arrival at complete self-knowledge. But there is a profound, life-changing difference between a woman who lives from the outside in, constantly adjusting herself to meet external demands, measuring her worth by others' reactions, making decisions based on what will gain approval rather than what aligns with her truth, and a woman who lives from the inside out, making choices that align with her deepest values even when they're unpopular, trusting her inner wisdom even when it conflicts with conventional wisdom. The world desperately needs women who know themselves completely. Not perfectly, but honestly. Women who can access both strength and softness without seeing them as contradictions. Women who can be logical and intuitive, independent and connected, ambitious and nurturing, not as different personas to be performed, but as facets of a complete, integrated human being. Everything that irritates us about others can lead us to an understanding of ourselves. The crisis you see in the world around you, the masks, the performance, the exhaustion, the disconnection, these are often reflections of your own internal struggles. Healing begins when you stop trying to fix the world and start understanding yourself. Change begins when you embody the authenticity you wish to see in others. Today's women aren't broken. They're not too sensitive, too demanding, too complicated, or too much. They're human beings who've been asked to be superhuman, and they're tired. The solution isn't to become less human. It's to become more authentically, unapologetically, courageously human. Your vision will become clear when you look into your heart. And when you do, when you truly listen to what's there beneath the noise of expectations and demands, you'll find not weakness, but power, not confusion, but clarity, not brokenness, but wholeness, waiting to be embraced, not a life that needs to be fixed, but a life that needs to be lived from the inside out. The privilege of a lifetime is to become who you truly are. That privilege isn't reserved for others, it's yours. That journey isn't someone else's responsibility, it's yours. That awakening, from dreams to reality, isn't a distant possibility. It's available to you right now, in this moment, through the simple, radical act of looking into your own heart and trusting what you find there. This is your invitation. This is your time. This is your life, waiting to be lived authentically. If this journey has touched something real in you, something that feels both terrifying and true, if you're ready to explore the territory of authentic living rather than perfect performing, Subscribe for more conversations that honor the full complexity of being human in a world that prefers simple answers. And if you know someone who might need to hear that they're not broken, just burdened, that they're not too much, just carrying too much, share this with them. Sometimes, the most healing thing we can offer another person is the recognition that their struggle is seen, understood, and shared. Until next time, the soul does not lie. And when it recognizes truth, it responds with relief, recognition, and the courage to begin again.